The atmosphere inside the towering glass walls of Forrester Creations has grown suffocating, heavy with the weight of unspoken betrayals, shifting loyalties, and the agonizing death of a family bond. For weeks, the tension has been mounting, a slow-burning fuse lit by Hope Logan Spencer's radicalized ambition and fueled by Brooke Logan Forrester's relentless pursuit of corporate dominance. At the center of this impending explosion stands Steffy Forrester Finnegan, a woman who has dedicated her life, her blood, and her unyielding passion to maintaining the legacy of her family's empire. As she sits in the co-CEO chair, a throne she earned through sheer brilliance and unwavering dedication, the realization begins to dawn on her that the ground beneath her feet is crumbling. The betrayal does not come from a corporate rival or a faceless board of directors, but from the very man who gave her life. Ridge Forrester, her father and supposed protector, has been swayed by the whispering demands of his wife, bringing them all to a catastrophic breaking point. The emotional devastation of this realization cannot be overstated. For Steffy, Forrester Creations is not merely a business, it is her birthright, the physical manifestation of her grandfather Eric's genius and her grandmother Stephanie's indomitable spirit. To be asked to step down, to take a lesser role so that Brooke, a woman whose historical presence in the company has always been a source of profound familial friction, can ascend to the co-CEO position, is an insult of unimaginable proportions. Steffy's initial reaction is one of volcanic fury, a fierce and uncompromising defense of her territory. She demands that Brooke back down, staring into her father's eyes, searching desperately for the man who once championed her brilliance. But as the days bleed into one another, and Ridge's agonizing hesitation becomes painfully apparent, the fire in Steffy's eyes transforms from defensive rage into a cold, calculating clarity. She realizes, with a chilling certainty, that Ridge will never change his mind. The die has been cast, and her father has chosen his wife over his daughter. In the quiet solitude of her executive office, surrounded by the sketches and fabrics that have defined her existence, Steffy undergoes a profound metamorphosis. She understands that staying at Forrester Creations under these new, humiliating terms would be a slow death to her spirit and her career. She refuses to be marginalized, refuses to be a secondary character in a narrative dictated by the Logan women. The internal conflict that briefly tore at her heart, the desperate desire to save her family's company versus the need to preserve her own dignity, evaporates, leaving behind a woman forged in unbreakable steel. Steffy makes a decision that will shake the very foundations of the Los Angeles fashion industry. It is a choice born of absolute necessity, fueled by a deeply personal betrayal, and executed with the ruthless precision of a true industry titan. She will not simply step aside, she will tear down the temple on her way out. The boardroom is thick with anticipation as Steffy convenes what will be her final executive meeting at Forrester Creations. Ridge, his face etched with guilt and sheer exhaustion, sits across from Brooke, whose eyes gleam with the premature excitement of an impending victory. Hope stands nearby, a silent sentinel of the Logan triumph, anticipating a complete surrender. They expect a capitulation. They expect Steffy to angrily accept a demotion, to swallow her immense pride for the sake of the family name and corporate stability. Instead, Steffy stands tall, her posture radiating an intimidating aura of absolute power. She does not yell. She does not weep. With a voice as sharp and cold as shattered glass, she delivers a shockwave that leaves the room utterly breathless. Steffy formally submits her resignation, severing her ties with the company that bears her maiden name. The silence that follows is deafening, a vacuum of disbelief as Ridge stares at the piece of paper that effectively ends his daughter's reign. But Steffy is far from finished. Resignation is merely the opening gambit in her masterclass of retaliation. As the shock begins to register on the pale faces of her adversaries, Steffy unveils the true scope of her devastating counterattack. She announces the creation of her own independent fashion empire, a brand that will rise immediately from the ashes of her Forrester legacy. She names it Finnegan International. The choice of name is a brilliant, devastating psychological strike. By adopting her married name for her corporate identity, She explicitly divorces herself from the Forrester clan, signaling to the world that her genius, her relentless drive, and her future are entirely her own. Finnegan International is not just a new company, it is a declaration of absolute independence, a sanctuary for true high fashion, and a direct, unyielding challenge to the establishment that just attempted to cast her out. The sheer audacity of this announcement leaves Ridge paralyzed with a sickening realization of what he has just unleashed upon his own legacy. Brooke's triumphant smile falters entirely, replaced by a creeping, icy sense of dread. They thought they were merely removing a stubborn executive to pave the way for their own vision. They never anticipated creating their own most formidable rival. Steffy outlines her vision for Finnegan International with terrifying eloquence. It will be a global powerhouse, unburdened by the nepotism and emotional baggage that has long plagued Forrester Creations. She speaks of radical innovation, of pushing creative boundaries, and of reclaiming the international runways that have always been her true domain. Every word is a dagger, meticulously aimed at the vulnerabilities of the people who forced her hand. She is not just leaving, she is declaring an all-out corporate war. The genius of Steffy's departure lies not only in her dramatic exit, but in the devastating scorched earth strategy she employs as she walks out the heavy glass doors. She knows that a fashion house is only as strong as the talent it houses, and Forrester Creations has long relied on the unsung heroes of the design room. Steffy does not leave alone. In a move of breathtaking ruthlessness, she recruits Zend Forrester Dominguez to join her at Finnegan International. Zend, who has been languishing in the shadows, his brilliant hope for the future collection permanently shelved by the very company that was supposed to nurture his talent, has reached his absolute breaking point. He has felt profoundly unappreciated, marginalized, and exhausted by the constant prioritization of others. When Steffy extends her hand, offering him the creative freedom, the massive budget, and the deep respect he has been starving for, Zend does not hesitate for a single second. His defection is a monumental blow, stripping Forrester of one of its most promising young visionaries. Yet, the catastrophic hemorrhage of talent does not stop with Zend. Steffy, possessing an intimate, granular knowledge of the company's operational heartbeat, systematically poaches the absolute best of Eric Forrester's master tailors. These are the artisans whose hands have shaped the couture masterpieces that define the brand, the fiercely loyal craftsmen who understand the drape of silk and the complex structure of a bodice better than anyone else alive. They have watched the internal politics tear the company apart, and when the brilliant, decisive Steffy offers them a prestigious place in her new empire, they follow her in a stunning mass exodus. The design rooms of Forrester Creations, once buzzing with the chaotic, beautiful energy of creation, are left eerily, tragically silent. Steffy has effectively hollowed out the company from the inside, leaving Ridge and Brooke to inherit an empty shell, a hollow monument to their own devastating hubris. The immediate aftermath of Steffy's departure and the mass defection of top-tier talent triggers an unprecedented corporate catastrophe. The financial markets, which thrive on stability, clear succession plans, and visionary leadership, react with swift and merciless brutality. As news of the internal civil war and the birth of Finnegan International leaks to the hungry fashion press, the stock of Forrester Creations plummets disastrously. Investors panic en masse, pulling their capital from a company that suddenly looks like a sinking ship captained by a fiercely divided family. The financial crisis is immediate, severe, and utterly terrifying, a freefall that threatens to erase decades of accumulated wealth and global prestige. The legacy that Eric Forrester built from the ground up, the empire that Steffy fiercely protected with her dying breath, is suddenly teetering on the jagged edge of the abyss, bleeding massive value with every passing hour. Ridge and Brooke, having just achieved their fiercely coveted goal of securing the co-CEO position together, find themselves staring directly into a financial abyss. The victory they celebrated so prematurely has turned to ash in their mouths. They are no longer the triumphant leaders of a global powerhouse. They are desperate crisis managers frantically trying to plug the gaping holes in a rapidly sinking vessel. The irony is as bitter as it is profound. Brooke fought tooth and nail, manipulating her husband to sit in the ultimate chair of power, only to discover that the power has completely evaporated, walking out the door in the form of her brilliant stepdaughter. The financial strain immediately begins to test the limits of their romantic and professional partnership, as Ridge is forced to confront the devastating reality that his inability to stand up for Steffy has cost him his company's entire future. The burden of leadership has never felt heavier, nor the consequences of betrayal more tangible. Across town, in the sleek, newly acquired, state-of-the-art offices of Finnegan International, the atmosphere is electric with the thrill of a massive new beginning. Steffy, flanked by Zend and her elite team of master tailors, wastes absolutely no time in launching her aggressive counteroffensive. She is a woman possessed, driven by a potent, intoxicating cocktail of vindication and pure, unadulterated talent. She calls a global press conference, standing before the flashing cameras of the international fashion media not as a wounded victim, but as a conquering queen. With unshakable confidence, she publicly declares her intention to compete directly with Forrester Creations on the international runway. She does not mince words. She frames her departure as a necessary, long-overdue evolution, a breaking of toxic chains that has allowed her true creative genius to finally be unleashed upon the world. Steffy's public declaration is a masterstroke of public relations and psychological warfare. She brilliantly positions Finnegan International as the undeniable future of high fashion, contrasting her dynamic, forward-thinking vision with the stagnant, politically paralyzed state of her former company. She vows to prove, stitch by stitch and collection by collection, that she is the true, undisputed heir to the Forrester talent, even if she no longer bears the name on her corporate letterhead. Her challenge is an open, aggressive invitation to a brutal, high-stakes competition that will completely captivate the industry. She is daring Ridge and Brooke to meet her on the unforgiving battlefield of the runway, knowing full well that she has taken their absolute best soldiers and left them scrambling in the dark. The international fashion community watches in absolute awe as the prodigal daughter transforms into the ultimate, unstoppable adversary. This monumental schism represents far more than just a corporate restructuring. It is a profound, irreversible emotional divorce between Steffy and the Forrester clan. The familial bonds that once held the company together through decades of turmoil have been severed with cold, surgical precision. The Thanksgiving dinners, the shared holidays, the underlying assumption that blood is always thicker than water, all of it has been incinerated in the raging fires of ambition and betrayal. Steffy has realized that to protect herself, her mental health, and her legacy, she must cut the emotional cord that tied her to a father who fundamentally failed her. This divorce is a deeply painful, yet incredibly liberating process. She sheds the heavy expectations and the historical baggage of being a Forrester, embracing the terrifying, exhilarating freedom of being an entirely self-made titan. The ripple effects of Finnegan International's explosive launch are felt throughout the entire Los Angeles fashion landscape, creating a volatile, three-way war for global dominance. On one side, the severely weakened Forrester Creations struggles desperately to maintain its footing, frantically searching for new talent to replace the irreplaceable legends they lost. On another front, Katie and Bill Spencer's newly ascendant Logan brand continues its aggressive, well-funded expansion, capitalizing on the chaos to seize market share and media attention. And rising rapidly in the center is Finnegan International, a sleek, hungry predator armed with the industry's best talent and the unmatched, ferocious drive of Steffy Forrester Finnegan. The dynamics of power have shifted so violently that no alliance is safe, and every single collection is now a matter of corporate life and death. The city has become a ruthless battleground, and high fashion is the weapon of choice. As the dust begins to settle on the initial shock of the resignation, the psychological toll on Ridge becomes increasingly, painfully apparent. He is a man haunted by the heavy ghost of his own disastrous decisions. He walks the empty halls of his design rooms, the silence a constant, agonizing reminder of the brilliant daughter he actively drove away. Carter Walton's prophetic warnings echo endlessly in his mind, a torturous loop of "I told you so" that offers absolutely no comfort. Rich is forced to watch from afar as Steffi builds her massive empire, her brilliance shining brighter than ever now that it is no longer eclipsed by his towering shadow. The guilt is a heavy, suffocating blanket, threatening to completely smother his creative spirit and his fragile marriage to Brooke, who now must bear the brunt of his unspoken, simmering resentment. Meanwhile, Brooke's long-sought victory feels increasingly hollow and fragile. She has the title, the corner office, and the perceived control, but she is presiding over a kingdom in absolute ruins. The severe financial crisis demands her constant, exhausting attention, forcing her to make difficult, highly unpopular decisions just to keep the lights on and the creditors at bay. The realization that she pushed so hard for a hostile takeover that ultimately gutted the company is a bitter, jagged pill to swallow. Hope, who initiated this radical push for power, finds her own future terrifyingly uncertain. The hope for the future line, though theoretically saved by Brooke's ascension, now completely lacks the financial backing and the manufacturing muscle to actually thrive. The Logan women have won the brutal battle for the boardroom, but they are rapidly, undeniably losing the war for the soul of the fashion industry. Their triumph is a pyrrhic victory of the highest, most